Welcome to Cyber Survivor. I'm Dan Dodson, and today I'm super excited to talk with a clinical perspective on cybersecurity breaches and impacts to patient care. Today, our guest is Don Neal. Don, welcome to the pod.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I can tell my story.
I am super excited. Ever since we got this on the books, I cannot wait to hear your story. Before we dive in, give us an opportunity to understand your background and how you became a CRNA.
Well, I started in high school at it was St. John then as a nurses aide co-op my senior year, and then I went to nursing school. Got out of nursing school, was a GN, a graduate nurse, then RN, and then I worked in the ICU, and then went to anesthesia school. And then I've been doing it ever since I graduated anesthesia school in '84, and I started at the hospital in 1976. So I've been doing it for a little bit.
Yeah, so you've seen the whole industry get digitized. I mean, before we even think about cybersecurity, I mean, you were there when there were paper charts and electronic medical records and everything. Talk to me a little bit about that transition to kind of set the stage.
Well, thank God they have a few old timers around because when our system, besides the cyber attack, our hospital got attacked and they shut down all the electronic charting. So a lot of the new kids didn't know how to paper chart because they've been doing electronic charting since they started nursing school. And so they didn't even know how to do the paper charting. And then, like with paper charting, you have paper charge slips, you have the face sheet, you have all the billing records. So half the young kids didn't even know how to collect all the information that they needed. You know, it's sort of like when I started, we had manual blood pressure cuffs, with the stethoscope and the cuff on the arm. And then we, switched to the electronic equipment. And like my clinical teachers and people that I worked with when I started, they still say you have to touch the patient, feel the pulse, use this, our senses that we have, and don't rely on the electronics.
Yeah, that's smart. So when you first started getting introduced to electronic medical records in your career, did you ever think that cybersecurity and all these bad actors would be coming after us? Did you think that technology was going to be, increase productivity, be a good thing clinically? How did you feel about that back?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I was kind of resistant going to the electronic charting because there's so many factors that, like giving anesthesia, there's going to be highs and lows of, say, their vital signs. Well, on paper charting, you only have 5-minute blocks. And so if they should drop their blood pressure in between, you're not recording that. I mean, you're treating it, you're taking care of it, but you had a little bit more window where you could take care of the patient and not have to worry so much about what it's going to appear on the record. Because I think everybody was fearful that some attorney would get a hold of the record and misinterpret the data that's on it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And do you think that that made care more difficult? Do you think it impacted the quality of care?
Oh, most definitely, because people got so focused on the computer that they weren't looking at the patient. Like I've switched internal medicine doctors because I'd make an appointment, I'd go see him, and he'd have his back to me and he's just asking me questions to input data on the computer. And I said, we could do this from home. And this was pre COVID when everyone did do it by home. But I said, I would still want a doctor that's going to listen to my heart, listen to my lungs, touch my pulse, feel the quality. And so I think that the care has been less because everybody is less personal. And in regards to the bad guys, I think you always thought that they might be there. Like when we used to have the credit cards with the ink sheet, you had to worry about taking that so nobody would get your signature and your number. Well, now they just get a digital image of it. So
Yeah, that's right. No question. I mean, healthcare is under attack every single day, and there's a lot of conversations out there about adversarial intent and why that is. Um, but specific to you, so take us back to the day where you experienced the cyber incident. How did you first hear about it, and what was your initial reaction?
Okay, in 2000, it was, I think, 2014, 2015, around the time where everybody was filing their taxes. And I think our department, we had probably 40 employees that do what I do in the department. You know, we were kind of at the higher end of the wage spectrum for nurses and nurse anesthetists, nurse practitioners. And one of the girls came in and says, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. My tax guy called me and said that somebody got my ID, my social security, and they filed taxes for me and they already got a refund." So that like scared me. So I called my tax person and they said, "We'll investigate." Well, the next day they said, "Yeah, someone's got your number." So I called St. Louis, where headquarters was, and I says, "I think we have a rat in the ship because there's two of us that already had, our ID or our social security number taken." And they said, "Okay, okay, we'll look into it. We'll get back with you in a week." Well, I didn't hear from them. I called them back, and by then, not only everybody pretty much in my department was affected, the nurse practitioners that worked on the floor, the PAs, kind of the higher end salaried people, all were affected. And so we, I had to refile, I had to get a PIN number. Um, and I called, I basically had to prove who I was. I had to get my birth certificate, my social security card. I said, "Man, I wish you were as diligent with the bad guy, confirming my ID. Now I have to prove I'm who I am." And so it was just a lot of phone calls, a lot of hassle. And then I called Social Security and they said, "Yeah, basically you're for the rest of your life you're affected by this."
Yeah. Well,
So
sorry that you experienced that. So if I'm understanding correctly, so there was a security incident at the hospital where they basically got the personal information of a set of nurses, and then they were filing taxes because they had all of your information and your W-2s kind of faster than you could, and they actually received the return, and then you had to go unwind all of this.
correct. And they think that it was somebody, an employee in the hospital that did it. They would never admit it. They wouldn't admit that they ever found them, and they said that they probably wouldn't try to, do anything legally against them. And so it was really distressing. And then we kept making like, "What are you going to do for us? What protection?" And so they offered us that LifeLock for a year, which only takes care of like your credit cards, nothing federal, only your like your credit cards. And so it was helpful, but it wasn't like, we're going to get you a new social security card or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
it didn't make it right, but I guess it was a step in the right direction, but didn't make it right
correct.
in your eyes.
And so now every year I have to get a PIN. Every month they tell me, go on your social security website and make sure nobody's filed for social security for me. And I did get a call probably in 2021 or 22 asking me if I retired. And I said, "No." They said, "Well, we didn't think so because we see that you're still filling out a time card and we're still paying you." Somebody had filed for, my retirement.
Wow. So
Yeah,
that's like 7 or 8 years later. It just
correct.
continues to linger. They keep the data, and it's just an issue. What did that create a lot of anxiety for you? I mean, do you
Oh,
worry about this?
for sure, for sure. Like I say, I check my social security religiously. Anytime, like sometimes I don't know about you, but for me, I'll get a thing from my credit union on my credit card saying, "Hey, did you did you order this, or did you spend $29.99 at, and I go, then you have to start thinking, did I buy something out? Because I'm an Amazon shopper and internet buyer. So I'm starting to think, did someone get my credit card? Did someone, is someone using my data? Not that I have a lot of credit cards, but I cut down to basically my debit card and my credit card just so I could track it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's a experience that tends to live on with you for sure. Was there any disruption clinically? I mean, obviously it impacted how you guys personally had to deal with that event, but did you see any disruption at that time, clinically or operationally within the health system?
No, just because that was more personal. That was our information, our leak. Later on, and I'm trying to think of what, I think I was off on surgery, but there was another hack into the electronic data charting where the lab, you couldn't get like a patient's history on the computer. You couldn't get like certain lab work. You couldn't, electronic orders. All that was disrupted.
Take me to that experience, Don, if you would. So, how did you first hear about that particular event? Were you in the middle of engaging with the patient when that happened? Did you hear about it before your shift? Like, how did you hear about that, and how did you?
Well, I heard about it like there was a lot of kind of undertone talk. I think the managers were having meetings, and then it kind of oozed out from there saying that there was a hack and that we have to go to paper charting, and so it was a pretty significant event.
Yeah. And when you heard about that, what was your gut reaction? I mean, how did you feel about that? Did you think, man, my day is going to be so much different than I thought it was going to be? I mean, what did that look like for you?
Well, it was different because we had to go to paper charting, and then we had to go back to all the extra paperwork that we were going to have to do. And we knew that, you know, that if an emergency come up, it wasn't like we were going to have access to this patient's health history because, like everyone has a history, and now it's all on computer. And now I could like click on Joe Smith. Okay, I can look all his history, his medication, and everything. Well, we didn't have access to that. So it potentially could have, there were no patients were harmed or hurt. You just had to get back to common sense medicine and treat the symptoms um, and go by their personal history.
Yeah. Don, would you say that you said it didn't necessarily ultimately harm anybody, but do you think it impacted care? Like, did the speed to which you guys were able to move through the day slow down because you were on paper and downtime procedures? Did you have to
Yeah.
cancel appointments that you know of? Like, did it delay any care?
Yeah, I would say it slowed care. I, I would say that, you had to be, because we couldn't get the lab results as quick as we wanted. And they had to go back because everything's digitalized and everything's, the computer this, the computer that. And so without it, you kind of had to kind of scramble a little bit to take care of the patient.
Yeah. So it certainly introduces an element of chaos to the delivery of care. I mean, you're kind of used to normally delivering care, leveraging the data that's available to you in the systems. All of a sudden, you don't have that data readily available. You go to downtime procedures. It creates a bit of chaos. There's some delays in care, but ultimately, sounds like they were able to successfully take care of patients.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I want to say, I can't remember exactly, but I think there were some cancellation of certain cases, until they could get their system of how they wanted to take care of the patients, like some of even the more critical cases.
And how long were you in that downtime procedure, Don? How long were you without computers?
3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, like
Wow.
3 months. Because then it kind of went through the hospital systems. It wasn't only just St. John, but I think McLaren had a hack, and then I want to say Beaumont had a hack, and so when you start hearing about these, these cyber attacks, I'm a patient at St. John, and so then I'm thinking, okay, now do they have my health record? Do they have all my information that way? So, and I know there's an orthopedic group in St. Clair Shores that was recently hacked. And so I got notification that, hey, just so you know, your medical records were basically exposed. So I think unfortunately, that's just the times we live in.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that the digitization of healthcare, given the disruption that it can be caused when it's taken away, like, was it worth it?
To go to computers,
Yeah.
um, I think it does. I think it's like I said. At the beginning I was totally against switching over just because trying to learn a new system. And now that we have the computer charting, it's like if I don't have it, like if we're in a room that doesn't have computer charting, it's it's more disruptive in the sense that now all our vital signs are on it. I know the system. It's easy to work now, but when you don't have it, you miss it.
Yeah. So you were resistant to get it. Now you're used to it. And when it's taken away, it's disruptive.
Correct. And in
Yeah.
like 6-8 months, we're going to a new computer system. So I'm sure I'll go through the same
Yeah.
birthing process, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll have to relearn a new system for sure.
Correct.
Um, during that event, how do you feel that the patients were informed? I mean, was it obvious to the patients that you guys were down on paper and that care would be delivered more carefully and slowly potentially?
I think the cases that were canceled or delayed, I think they were made aware. I think the average patient really doesn't understand the whole medical system. I know, like say my father, I'm 65, but people that are probably 70 to 90, they don't know. They just do what their doctor tells them. And I think the younger kids, whether they feel anything, I'm not sure. Um, so I don't know how much the patient feels impacted, other than if they were delayed or canceled, then they're well aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's really interesting because the adversaries, the bad guys, they're trying to, one of the reasons why they're trying to attack healthcare is because they want to hold these organizations ransom. And they know that healthcare provider based organizations, hospitals, health systems, practices are more likely to pay because they need systems. They're so reliant on these systems to deliver care. And so they use that, against us, so to speak, right? Because they know we're more likely to pay so that we can continue to deliver care. Because ultimately that's the mission of the healthcare organization.
Correct. They're holding them hostage,
That's
you
right.
know.
Yeah.
So
So what type of cyber training are you getting from a clinical perspective? I mean, are they training you up so that you can be part of the defense? I mean, how much visibility do you have into what the healthcare organization is doing from a cyber perspective?
well, about every 3 to 6 months, we have to do online training of like what's phishing, what's suspicious, what emails not to open. And I think they even might send out something that is just as a test, just to see if you're going to open it. And so we do get, like, I want to say every 6 months we have to do this online course to help us prevent from opening up maybe a bad email or something.
Yeah, yeah. Training and awareness is a big topic in cybersecurity. Lots of organizations are doing that. Do you think it's effective? I mean, do you feel like you are a stronger cyber warrior, so to speak, today than you were before you started receiving training?
Yeah, I think so. Like if I don't recognize something, I don't open it.
Yeah.
And if it looks like it doesn't pertain to me, I don't open anything. Even on my phone and on my computer, I'd probably wipe out more things, and then if I get a second one, I say, okay, well maybe this is important, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great approach. I mean, if somebody wants to if it's a meaningful communication and it's accurate, then they'll hit you up again. That's a great strategy. Um, what do you think about cybersecurity in general in healthcare? I mean, you've seen a ton of large breaches that have been reported. You've seen impact to patient care across the industry. I mean, what do you think we could be doing to make cybersecurity more resilient and stronger from the clinical perspective?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know. I mean, that's to me, like I have my one son, he's 23. I tried to get him into go into cybersecurity when he was 18 coming out of high school because I thought that it was going to be probably the most important, impactful thing that we go through because of all our personal information being online and, like the dark web and all those things. But I mean, how do you beat these guys? I mean, they're smarter than me, and they're. I mean, I'm still typing with one, two fingers, and these guys are, going into areas that I couldn't get to if you gave me a head start. I mean, just getting what we're doing, you know, it takes me a minute, So I'm not sure. Um, what because I think there's a lot of filters in place. Like when I sign on in the morning, and for every case that I do, literally I have to sign in my ID, my password, I think 3 times. And if I'm in a busy area like endoscopy where I'm going to do 15 to 20 cases, I'm signing in 3 times for every case that I'm starting. So um, so that we have to go through those hurdles, and we have a badge that we can slide to get into certain areas of the hospital. But when we asked if we could just slide our badge through, to get onto the computer, they said no, because that's, too easy, or you're going to maybe leave the computer open and that. So
Yeah, that's very common to make clinicians log in multiple times for security purposes. Do you think that slows down care? I mean, is that annoying to you, or have you just kind of gotten used to it?
it's annoying, and I've gotten used to it.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that you factor in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me, I'm always early and I'm always on time. So for me, it doesn't bother me because I'm ahead of the game.
Yeah.
I'm doing it before my patient's in the room. For someone that's a little late, or, is not quick at their job, then I'm sure it impacts everything.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I want to go back for a moment to when you were personally impacted with the tax filings. You mentioned that you got kind of 1 year of credit monitoring. How, and that wasn't enough. What else do you think they could have done to make it right, given the situation?
Well, that's it. That's something that we complained about, that it wasn't enough, but they didn't really have anything else that they could offer us other than, all the information that everyone else gave us. Just check your stuff, check your credit cards, check your social security, you know, get your PIN number. So I mean, I wanted to find the guy and hang him, that because it impacted my life. And so, like I said, every time I get my pin, it's like, great, then I have to remember where I put the pin when I send it to my financial guy, so he has it. And So, it just requires more work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like you said, I mean, whatever, 7, 8 years later, it impacted you again, so that's, that's interesting. Yeah. It's always a challenge, when these situations happen, what can they do? I mean, these bad actors have such complicated networks, and are so sophisticated, and tracking them down and ultimately holding somebody accountable, has proven to be quite difficult. There's been certainly some successes, but ultimately, it has been a challenge to find them. So, I don't know if you have any words of wisdom on what organizations could do to make it less impactful, than what you received, which was credit monitoring, but that seems to be the standard today.
Right. Yeah, it's just, I think people have taken the computer age for granted.
Yeah.
And I don't think, like when we were growing up, we might have left our front door open to go to church because you didn't think anyone was going to come in. Now everyone has, 2 or 3 locks. And so, I just tell people to be cognizant and track your stuff, track your financial stuff, your medical stuff. And really, you're kind of vulnerable because, like, you go to the doctor and they want your social security number. And it's just like, really? And, or if you apply for a loan, or everybody wants your numbers. And it's just like, so you're vulnerable because a lot of times you don't have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I mean, I remember, the computer system, somebody could access all the patient load at the hospital, and they've got everybody's, name, address, birth date, probably their social security number. So you got to trust the people that are handling all that paperwork.
Yeah.
And that's why I said jokingly that when I called the headquarters, I said, you got a rat in the ship, and it's just like, you know, what can they do about it? Because, they're not on everybody else's computer, but, does it get to the where somebody is going to be monitoring me? And because if I go on another patient's, like if I say you're in the hospital and you're a friend of mine and you say, hey, can you check what my lab work is? Well, if I go in there and check your lab work, they know that I've accessed and I'm not your doctor.
Yep.
And so that's an immediate termination.
Yep.
Like I remember when the Detroit Red Wings had their accident and they went to one of the local main hospitals, and someone reported to a reporter who was in their emergency room. They tracked them down and they were fired.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people don't realize that there's fingerprints when you get on the computer. There's fingerprints everywhere, and there's always someone smarter that can find it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Privacy and HIPAA and making sure that people are not snooping in records they shouldn't be snooping in, is certainly something that is a challenge. I think the good news is, to your point, there's a lot of fingerprinting. There's a lot of tools available, and logging and software that's used to make sure that that doesn't happen. So, and I guess lastly, Don, I would love to get your opinion on just the cybersecurity landscape in general for healthcare. We're obviously attacked. What recommendations would you have for patients, uh, specifically, given that where they're receiving care, they could end up in a situation where the clinical staff doesn't have access to their information? I mean, is there anything you'd recommend patients do to help make sure that their care is not disrupted?
I've always said that if you went to your internal medicine doctor, that they give you like a credit card, and on that credit card that has all your information, what you've been treated, what your medication is. And then you leave there and say you go get x-rays, and you give them your credit card and they put your x-rays on that credit card. And so then you have a personal record of all your information. And instead of just putting it on some storage place, that you have your own personal record that you can go to your doctor and he can plug that into his computer and then he's got access to everything. I mean, I don't know if that's just futuristic or what.
Yeah, that's certainly a proposed solution. Not one that's readily available today, but definitely a good idea. Uh, well, I really appreciate you sharing your insights today, Don. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience about your experiences dealing with a cyber breach that we haven't covered today?
No, just that it really does interrupt. And I truly believe if these people worked as hard at a legitimate job, that we'd be further ahead in the computer world. But people want the easy way out, and I think hacking at home and getting all the money, that it might just be easier.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, these most of the attacks are now sophisticated nation state coordinated attacks, and they are for monetary gain, as you mentioned. So, really appreciate it, Don. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm Dan Dodson, and this is Cyber Survivor.
Thank you.